So with that, the next one was we're dealing with a pre-application, and we realized that there's a piece of property that may need a zoning interpretation. The land use ordinance indicates that when there is a discrepancy in a zoning boundary, the director makes an interpretation as where that boundary is appropriately located. In this case, we have two pieces of property that take access off from Diamond Lake Boulevard. And there was recently developed a subway on this property that's at 1969 Diamond Lake Boulevard. The pre-application was for the property behind it. These two lots are designated residential, and to us that seemed a bit strange that when you look at everything that's on the north side of Deer Creek, it's all industrial except for these two lots. So in looking at Ludo, what it says is that zone boundaries are supposed to follow the center of water bodies. It also says when there is a variance between what's physically on the ground and what's shown on the map, the boundary should be appropriately adjusted as determined by the director. So given that, we obtain a copy of a 1956 survey. Here is Deer Creek in this location. This part here, the upper part, is generally those two properties that we just showed you on the zoning map. This is a current assessor's map. Deer Creek has moved substantially to the south. It no longer follows this boundary. And these lots that once fronted on what was Oregon Avenue, but here listed as Cherry Street, now are on the other side of Deer Creek, and Oregon Avenue, which is down here, which are the back part of these parcels. Oregon Street itself has been abandoned. And in fact, this one property at this location, this 5400, still has an Oregon Street address. And obviously it would be quite difficult to get to Oregon Street from that property, especially being it doesn't exist.
Bridge.
These maps are a little bit harder to read, but these are aerials. Here's a 1954 aerial, and you can see if you follow this along, this was Deer Creek. This is the property in question. Here's the current alignment of Deer Creek. It's fairly clear to us that there's been a shifting in Deer Creek, and based on Ludo saying that zoning boundaries should follow the center of the water body, that the predominant zoning on the north side of Deer Creek is industrial, and that you cannot access these properties other than from Diamond Lake. An interpretation has been made that the zoning boundary is to be adjusted so that these properties will have a comp plan designation of industrial and be zoned M2 consistent with the property to the north. This information will also be shared with the property owner as well as Douglas County, and our maps will be appropriately corrected and updated. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Well, I'm assuming, Marion, that when new development occurs on those properties, they'll be issued a more accurate address?
We are already in the process of doing that, as a matter of fact. The address correction, I think, went out today.
Good.
Is the property ownership, does that extend to those pieces that are still on the south side of Deer Creek?
These properties are owned by the property owner that is north of them. The properties south of Deer Creek have different ownership.
So they're already separated by the thread of the creek.
Right.
Now, looking at the aerial, and both the old one and the new one, it appears that there's never been development on those two lots.
That's correct.
Do you think that the creek shift occurred in 1964, or do we have any idea?
The best that people have been able to tell me is that there was some fill work that went on there at one point in time many years ago, and that may well have affected the flow of the creek itself. But water bodies shift over time. Now, it's a substantial shift in this case.
Also,
I think it was assisted.
Lack of a better term, mining that was done on the property on the south side at one.
Okay.
They were using it as an aggregate supply.
Oh, okay. So it just seemed logical through an interpretation as to adjust the zoning boundary to better fit the physical characteristics of the area.